Better World Blueprint. Good humans doing good things.
Hi, I'm Siobhan Hunt. What makes you feel hopeful for the planet's future, your life, your family and friends? For me, it's seeing all the people who are working to make the world a better place. The human spirit at its finest. And that's what this podcast is all about. These people fill my heart with hope, and my aim is that it does the same for you. Welcome to A Better World Blueprint. Geoff Coombes was kicking goals in a lucrative career when he realised it wasn't filling his soul. So he and two friends had a coffee and started planning. The result? A charity, Tour de Cure, that has raised over $130 million for cancer research. After 15 years growing the charity and making a big impact, Geoff decided he wanted to use his skills in a different way. In 2014, he launched Stride 4, where he aims to maximise social impact by creating strong collaborations across different charity sectors. This is my chat with social entrepreneur Geoff Coombes. What led you to this work? Obviously now you're doing Stride 4, but previous to that you were doing Tour de Cure. Similar types of work, it's very purpose-led. Was there a wake-up moment for you? Was there a point in time when you realised that this was the kind of work you wanted to do?
Yeah, good question. I think if I go all the way back, I was lucky enough to cycle across America when I was 26, and an incredible experience and that sense of adventure. And on that big ride, we met a number of people who were doing things on behalf of a cause, going back to 1996. So it's a fair while ago. But that probably was that first moment of seeing people do things on behalf of others. And then 10 years later, I was working for a merchandise company that was I was looking after Coca-Cola, and I was making widgets and gadgets and show bags and Powerade sponsorship and Coke Zero launch material. And I just had that very empty feeling and realizing that I was making some relatively cool stuff, but it was also not really making an impact on the world or anything. So I think I drew back on the fact that big bike ride that was life-changing in being able to experience something like that and meeting people, and that openness to learning and sharing, and then decided at that point, wouldn't it be nice to do something for a cause? Got together a couple of great friends, Gary Burtwistle and Samantha Hollier, and said, why don't we do a bike ride raising funds for a cause? Sam was a guru in events, and Gary, a bit of a legend in marketing. But we kind of combined all those kind of levels of experience and energy and said, why don't we help?
There's a lot in that answer. So if you bear with me, I have a few questions to unpick. One thing I'm curious about is that point where you were doing the merchandising for Coca-Cola and doing all that sort of thing, and it felt empty. Can I ask how old you were at that point?
Good question. I would have been 32, thereabouts.
Okay, that sounds quite young. A lot of people come to that realisation maybe a little bit later than 32, because a lot of people at that age are still getting their head around, I suppose, putting down their roots or making moves in their career or starting a family. They don't often have the space or the headspace to have the epiphany that you obviously had at that point.
I'd probably take it back to my upbringing. My dad worked for Qantas, so we were expats for the best part of 14, 15 years. So always had, a couple of years in Singapore, England, Malaysia, Germany, Africa. So I probably didn't kind of have the traditional, hey, I've got the next 10 years mapped out. And yes, finding that sense of need to put more purpose into your life. But I think that experience of living in all those countries, appreciating where, the privilege that I had, but also the challenges that each of these places taught me in those early days. And then, I think the people that I was fortunate to spend time with were also guiding in respect to what is not the meaning of life, but where do you get more fulfillment in life?
And I'm imagining that part of the influences that came together to help you move along this path sounds like you met people in the early days when you did that bike trek across America and possibly even growing up in different parts of the country. Can you think of any one person or any couple of people, I suppose, that particularly made an impression on you in terms of living a life of purpose? Because sometimes it's who we see that inspire us to think differently about what we're going to do with our lives. I'm wondering if there was anyone in particular that stands out to you.
No, I don't think there's any one person. There's always that realization of the people that you meet when you spend time giving of yourself, which is this, purpose-led environment. They really are the best people. They are the pillars of society. They're role models. And the more of those people that I met, the more committed I was to wanting to spend time amongst them and then becoming part of a community that attracted those people and in turn kind of elevated them to be even better versions of themselves, and recognizing that, we can create those communities and it'll attract those people, and somewhat infectious, love the fact that they're the people that I get to call close friends and mentors and warriors and crusaders for our causes, but equally you don't meet them generally in the street.
It is intoxicating when you're around those people. And I think particularly at this point in history, being around people who are genuinely committed to making the world a better place is sometimes surprising, but also really inspiring.
You're right. As we age, we get to that point in our life where, career and acquiring things, dare I say it, the house and the car and the renovations on it, like they don't take the priority that is finding the right people to spend time with and recognizing that we're only on this earth for a short time, and can we improve it on behalf of, our family and the causes that we care about. I don't think, yes, it's definitely feels like it's, everyone's talking purpose. Definitely feels like there's a movement towards it, but as it kind of having been in it for a long time now, it doesn't feel as though it's something that's not had just a straight, right, this is where the world is starting to feel there's more to life than consuming and being selfish, and recognizing that we have a role to play if we choose to.
Going back to the start of Tour de Cure, you did have a lot of experience in, marketing and connecting people and that sort of thing. I can't imagine that setting up something like this was straightforward. Once you had that initial chat with your friends about, hey, let's do this ride to raise some money, what were the next steps for you? Like, what did you practically have to put in place to make it happen?
Look, it was over a coffee where we shared the idea, and this has been brewing for a number of years in my head. So I had a framework already in mind around how we would do it. And there's a map that I spent some time just drawing up, which was a map of Australia and 4 little dots to say we're going to ride from Brisbane to Sydney, Melbourne to Sydney, Darwin to Broome, and Brisbane to Cairns, I think. And in the middle of that map, I drew $2 million. And somewhat selfishly, I think the cause and believing that we could raise it, and the 2 million in the middle of this map, that felt wildly ambitious, but creating those rides and obviously the ability to deliver them safely and engage people. But it really didn't take long with that clear vision of $2 million in 4 years. And within a matter of weeks, we had probably 6 or 8 close friends, not all of whom were cyclists, but were kind of invested in the chance to do something. And a number of them still remark that, we thought we'd back you, and if it failed, what happened? Who cares? We at least gave it a try. But those kind of 6 to 8 very close friends that in turn brought another 3 or 4 people. So within a matter of weeks, we suddenly had 25 was it 25 cyclists and 3 support crew, and the Lexus dealership that I'd bought a car from kindly said, you know what, our dealer principal is going to come and ride and we'll lend you a couple of cars. And those early foundation mates also knew people in Denkerub and Arnott's and Optus. And so within a very short period of time, we had some backing that meant we could, build something. But then the logistics of, riding out of Brisbane, down the coast, all that was, again, not too difficult, but we established a brand and Tour de Cure with a vision for 4 years. And I think in those days we even had, we wanted to be the most inspirational cycling community in the world. So I think, again, that connection to vision and that purpose that led us to going, okay, we're going to raise $2 million. In the first year, it was just over $280,000. The second year, $320,000. The third year, Mark Beretta from Sunrise got involved, and suddenly we were probably on track to raise $600,000, and he took us to $1.6 million when you suddenly got an audience like that. So lots of fortuitous moments, but at the same time, strong foundations in building a brand and creating something that people could buy into, the vision. And I think those early foundational kind of mates that got involved all gave so much of themselves that very hard to do on your own. But when you've got kind of incredible people taking a piece of the pie, all of a sudden, within a very short period of time, the momentum was well and truly rolling down the road.
It sounds incredible to have such a strong network of people in your team. I'm also very conscious of the fact that over this period of building the charity, you've also had your own family. Even if you didn't have children, you obviously still have to keep a roof over your head and paying bills, etc. Starting these sorts of ventures can be personally challenging, right? Because we all live in a country where you have to pay for these things. So I'm just wondering, was that ever added pressure? Was that something you had to try and manage while you were doing all this?
Oh, we could segue a lot into this one. Look, I think without a doubt there's sacrifice, and my family have sacrificed. I do remember some very clear advice early on, is that you make your millions and then you start a charity, which is quite traditionally the way, all these wealthy philanthropists that kind of take it up when they've suddenly acquired the wealth. No, very much the opposite. And Tour de Cure didn't have any full-time employees for the first 5 years. So that definitely strained. And even now, like the next venture that I've started, Stride, it doesn't sit with millions of dollars worth of backing. But for me, that self-belief in why we're doing it, and then the impact that it has, and seeing how it engages with people. It's not too hard to make those sacrifices, but early days with a young family and committing to a life where you're in a charity, you can't earn lots of money. It's frowned upon, let alone it's just not done. But years later, I don't know if I'd changed too much. But yes, for anyone out there who's thinking about starting something like this, you got to have some personal backing in order to kind of commit to something, because I think that's where a number of these great initiatives maybe fall over, when people can't sustain it, because it does take a number of years to get something like this up and running.
And one of the questions I ask all my guests is whether they ever stumbled along the path. I mean, that could be the financial pressure, but it can also be in self-belief that you'll get it done. It could be in practical challenges. I'm wondering if there were any significant stumbles for you along the way.
Look, I think not with Tour de Cure. And then even with Stride as we're going. No, there's nothing that's holding me back. I think it's more you've just got to, especially, you're effectively an entrepreneur starting something that doesn't exist. So building something with a vision, when you're stuck in the trenches and not feeling the growth, I think that's when it becomes particularly hard. The minute you get out there and I can engage people to the vision that I'm trying to create. But I think there's lots of times when you're, doing the work and, in your own head trying to get the foundation set up without that positive feedback coming from other people. The other challenge, I think, is also just that momentum. And certainly we saw it last year when we got Stride 4 off the ground. Some corporates and charities, like, oh, I'll come and talk to you next year. They want to see it off the ground first.
Mm. Has the work you've done changed you, do you think?
Without a doubt. Yeah, of course. And I think I love the humility that it brings. And I genuinely just want to help charities engage deeper with their corporates and their community and ultimately raise millions and millions of dollars. So, that I don't have an aspiration for an Aston Martin and the holiday houses and the things. Yeah, there's a desire to kind of create things or to find that financial security, but the value that I feel in helping these causes and the community of people that get involved, it makes it very easy to get up and out of bed.
Can you give us any specific examples where you've seen the impact of your work? I can hear that you've raised money and there must be a lot of satisfaction in that, but I imagine that you have had personal relationships where you have seen the impact of what you've done. And I'm wondering if any of those stand out in your memory.
Look, lots of them. And I think the people that I consider dear friends, they're probably the shining examples of what it meant to find Tour de Cure and now Stride. The value that it's presented to them through mental health and a sense of purpose. Lots of examples there. The people who found Tour de Cure at a time when they needed it, be it in their recovery or in honour of a loved one, or again, a connection to a cause that they wanted to help and could see how they could contribute. The beauty with Tour de Cure and Stride is we get to see the impact. And if that's a big research project come to life and you talk to the researchers or you meet the kids that have been impacted by the Zero Childhood Cancer Project that's now got incredible success rates in treatment of what might have been terminal cancer diagnosis for young people 15, 20 years ago it was, and now there's the survival rates are up around 83%. And then even last week, we went and visited the Starlight Children's Room at Randwick Children's Hospital, and appreciating that our community have helped fund this oasis from kids that are dealing with cancer. And it's different projects across different causes. So I think now one of the challenges I think with Stride is that we're helping 25 to, in time it'll be up to 100, 150 different charities across mental health, cancer, disability. But each one of them is going to nominate a $10,000 high impact project that we will help bring to life. And it's, keeping language alive in the Northern Territory through the Indigenous Literacy Foundation, recording a story from a tribe, from a local group, Indigenous group. The Property Industry Foundation, what they're doing for youth homelessness and putting more rooms out there to support nearly 43,000 kids or young people each year who are suffering homelessness. Fred Hollows and the work that they do. So it's wonderful to feel that we're playing a small role in that. And I think even now, I've been quite knowledgeable in cancer and immunotherapy and the progress that was being made. And also, people would call you and say, hey, I've had this diagnosis. Can you help? No expert in medicine, but years of appreciating the best ways to help someone at that first point in their, cancer journey. Now Stride kind of sits on the other side of that, helping lots of different causes, but in a very positive way, helping channel the energy that we can put towards the projects that these incredible charities will bring to life.
You do amazing work, Geoff. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Pleasure. I'd love to, if anyone wants to come and get involved, look us up, Stride 4. We have a corporate challenge coming up. That's a new part to Stride 4. We've got a corporate challenge series. So Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, get your teams involved. A big part of what we do and the difference for Stride is that we have events that bring communities together, but equally kind of put the fun into the coming together as a community. We have all these fun activation zones, ice baths, scavenger hunts, obstacle courses. So that team building, focused on well-being, focused on building communities. And again, that unique part for Stride is that you get to support the causes you care about.
Geoff Coombes from Stride 4. If you're keen to see how Geoff can help your charity or workplace make the world a better place, check out the links in the episode notes. I'm Siobhan Hunt. See you on the next episode of A Better World Blueprint.